Just want to add my opening remarks here and thank you for giving us your afternoon. My name is Dave Lawler, and I'm the co-chair with Dr. Jeff Len of ITF. We've had about 113 people or so that have been involved in ITF at some level, and we've made significant progress from the outset in terms of really framing up what ITF is to us and differentiating this initiative from many of the initiatives that are happening across the country. We've started a scanning tour where we've gone out and talked with other universities that are doing something similar, and we really do have a novel approach in that we lead with investment. I'm pleased to say that of the $60 million goal by the end of phase 2, which is the phase that we're in right now, and we'll select 6 from the 9 that we'll talk about today, we should be upwards of 25 million identified at that $60 million goal. So that's great progress in a short window of time, and more to come. So with that, we wanted to give you a quick overview of where we were last year, or last time we did this at the beginning of phase 1, and then a couple of gentlemen that are leading the exploration team will walk you through it in more detail. We wanted to give you a quick update on where we were last time. So from phase 1, we kicked off hybrid courses, strategic sourcing, expanded study abroad, and the GW Temp Agency, telecommuting, and lease-based reduction. And in aggregate, those 6 are worth about $11.5 million. There's a champion that is leading each one of those initiatives, and each of them are at various stages, but all being implemented as we speak. So the reason we started with this is we wanted to take you back. How many of you were here at the same showcase for the last phase? Show of hands. Good. Well, thank you for coming back again. What we did, which may have been a little bit behind the scenes, but we collated the feedback that came from each of these tables, and we modified the one-pagers that went behind each of these ideas such that when we went to implement, the ideas that came up and the suggestions and feedback from this group became an integral part in what the final product was of the initiative that was actually or is being implemented. We plan to do the same thing with the feedback today, so please do that. We will look at it again ahead of our meeting with the President next week, and if we need to modify some of the ideas or take your suggestions and feedback to the President and his cabinet, we will do that.
On behalf of Dave Green and the other members of the Innovation Task Force Exploration Committee, I do want to add a warm welcome to all of you for participating in this showcase of ideas this afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about the process, and then Dave and I are going to tag team through an introduction to the ideas that we're showcasing today, and then Dave will wrap up with an explanation of what we expect to do this afternoon. So over much of the past academic year, the Exploration Committee has met to dream, create, develop, generate, scan, review, scrutinize, and discuss a host of ideas, keeping with the goals of the Innovation Task Force to provide opportunities for the university to generate revenue from new sources, accomplish our work in a more effective and efficient manner, and to target cost-saving measures which would concurrently improve key business processes. 30 of the most significant of the ideas we put forward were then refined by an analytic support team staffed by colleagues from finance, budget, human resources, the Division of IT, and the College of Professional Studies. These ideas were evaluated by the Exploration Committee against a set of 9 criteria. Of course, what we wanted is not just a positive outcome for the idea, but to ensure the fact that none of the stakeholders would have to sacrifice because of implementation of those ideas. The ideas needed to be aligned with the strategic goals of the university. It's a little difficult to see here. It's important that we not disrupt successful business practices, that the ideas would lead to significant recurring savings, that there would be an overall improvement at the university to one or more of the university stakeholders, and that a net return from implementation should be commensurate with the investment that we were making. We wanted the idea to, of course, enhance the GW experience for our stakeholders, and particularly not to erode the quality of the education that we deliver here at GW. it should be possible to implement the idea in a reasonable period of time. And as the purpose of this initiative was to claim resources for investment in the academic priorities of the president and the vice president and provost, we also looked at the ease or challenge of tracing and allocating the savings from these new revenue sources. So this week at the Virginia Science and Technology campus, and today here at Foggy Bottom for the Foggy Bottom community and the Mount Vernon community, we're presenting the top selection of ideas for your reflection and consideration. A condensed term between the fall and spring semesters, a wellness program for benefited employees, seminars for public and private sector executives, a summer in Washington experience for internationals, a new degree program in research administration, a program in energy efficiency upgrades for our buildings, a focus on retention and timely graduation of our students, a degree completion program for working professionals, and a center spotlighting English as a second language. Dave?
The first idea that we'd like to present is executive education, which doesn't say much in and of itself of the title, but we want to develop a series of contemporary seminars. The target audience for this is our industry leaders. This is something that Dean Guthrie at the business school has offered to champion. It's something that he's done in a prior life. And I know that we do this sort of in bits and pieces now at GW, but this is going to be a more comprehensive, aggressive approach. We think that even though it would be championed out of the business school, be worked across the entire university, touch issues like healthcare, economics, politics, energy, all things that are very popular today and that people would want to come to GW, come to Washington, D.C. to learn about. Healthy campus is an idea. This is something that won't be new to you if you've heard, from friends or places that you've worked before or heard in the news that other employers are doing, looking at the rising healthcare costs, which the payroll and the benefits associated with keeping employees on staff is by far the largest expense that any employer has, most employers have. By any measure, by most opinions, healthcare costs are going to continue to rise. And the idea here is to develop a comprehensive program where we can identify major health risks and opportunities, if there are such, to avoid further rising costs and to possibly reduce costs in certain areas. Building energy efficiency. I'm sure a lot of you work or maybe even live in the buildings around campus where you could walk around every day and say to yourself, geez, why haven't we replaced this light bulb or this light switch? The university does have, from what I've seen, a very comprehensive program, especially when we're building new buildings, going for the LEED certifications, et cetera. And so the university is not standing still when it comes to things like energy and sustainability. They have very large projects, very aggressive projects, very good projects going on. But there are other buildings. There are smaller buildings, there's older buildings, some maybe that are not up for renovation where with our friends, help from our friends from the energy office, sustainability office, we've looked at implementing a program over the next several years where we can modernize some of the technology in those buildings, some of the structure in those buildings to go along with the things that we're already doing to further enhance our sustainability, reduce the carbon footprint, and of course save money. January term, again, as Michael teed up in the opening remarks, I know a lot of you that are currently in school or have been to school know that there are other institutions that offer a term sometime between when you leave in December and before you get back in January. Obviously, with the advances in technology, more online courses, more hybrid courses, more contemporary courses, there's even more opportunity here to have a term in between the fall and the spring. Would really be interested in your feedback here. We got a lot of feedback throughout the vetting process on how this could work, what kind of classes students would be interested in, and we heard all kinds of varying feedback here, whether it would be on campus, hybrid, fully off campus. So very interested in your feedback here. I think this is a program that could be really successful, and certainly we're not the first ones to try to do this.
So we all recognize Washington has truly become an international city. We have a workforce that's rich in employees from a variety of parts throughout the world. This is the stepping off place for large numbers of visitors to the United States. and we want to take advantage of Washington as a truly international city by providing a unique opportunity to attract students to GW in the summer before college begins, to acclimate to the United States, to provide an opportunity for an international student experience or a Summer in Washington activity. Well, we view research administration as a career growth area. GW has a unique opportunity to be a partner with major research funders who are headquartered in this area. We're the home to the National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health, the National Endowment for the Arts, National Endowment for the Humanities, Department of Energy, and many prestigious foundations are located here in the city of Washington. It's an opportunity to partner with these organizations and create a new degree program leading to professionals who are familiar with and aware of the changing environment for research and funding, not only working at these organizations, but in institutions like GW or some of the private organizations that seek funding from these public sources to grasp the fundamentals and take a leadership role in those organizations. This idea of an ESL Center focuses on combining both English as a second language for instruction of international employees, such as professionals at organizations in the area, but also as a means of perhaps training undergraduates who have an intention for employment in environments in which English would be a second language. There are many factors that affect our national ranking. One of the important components of that ranking is the retention of students and the 6-year graduation rate. This particular idea focuses on identifying strategies to improve both retention and timely graduation to enhance a student's experience here at GW and also to provide space for new enrollees. Bachelor's Weekend College. This idea builds on data that suggests that there are many working professionals who didn't complete their 4-year bachelor's degree program. It would set up an executive-style weekend degree completion program for working adults. It might be at one of the off-site centers, partially online, but there are quite a number of examples of this particular program enriching the lives of professionals in the workforce.
Before I introduce you to the rules of the musical chairs feedback game that we're going to play, we actually have a special guest. The University Provost, Dr. Steve Lerman, would like to say a few words.
The ITF activities, I think, first of all, are a fantastic thing for GW to have done. Most of you don't know, many of you do know because I've only been here a year. Before I left, I was actually co-leading the counterpart activity at my prior institution, MIT. And it was amazing, the parallels. When I found out about ITF, we looked down the list of ITF ideas, we looked at the list of the ideas that had come out of a very, very similar process at MIT. We aligned the two, and it turns out there's lots of comparability. Not surprisingly, they're both universities. You know, a lot of the same ideas emerged and were getting implemented, and almost on exactly the same timeline, which is also fascinating. But there was one key difference that I think really made the GW ITF experience vastly preferable. At MIT, where I left, that work was getting done to dig out of a budget hole. That is, the reasons for it were motivated by revenue had fallen off, and we need to find a way to reduce the impact of that revenue fall off to avoid more layoffs. And in the end, there were layoffs, but much less because of the work of the equivalent of ITF there. At GW, the motivation was entirely different. ITF is a way of becoming a better organization so we can reallocate the resources we've put into other things back to academically focused initiatives. And I think that's the world of difference. One is a mitigate the pain approach, and the other, what we're doing here at GW, is how do we become a better organization so we can focus as much of our resources on the core mission of teaching and research. And I think, first of all, it's a lot more fun, trust me. It really is. The whole mindset, you can have the same discussion over the same idea, but here, the money we release, which will come back to the academic functions. So this is not a budget cutting exercise. It really is a vehicle for reflecting on how we do things and then refocusing as much of the resources as we can gained from efficiencies or new revenue sources back into the academic mission, which at the end is really what the places should be about. So I'm really excited about ITF. The work that's gotten done in preparing for this meeting, the ideas that came in, the further refinement is taken an enormous amount of effort for a lot of people. And I want to thank every single one of the people, some of whom you've seen already, some of whom you'll see today, but many, many other people did a tremendous amount of work. And we owe them a debt of gratitude, and of course, your participation here, we owe you our thanks as well. But the one singular promise is that every dollar saved or every dollar earned is not to offset some deep gaping hole in the budget, but rather to find ways to spend that money so as to fulfill our mission to our students and to our obligations to be at the cutting edge of research. And I think that's just a wonderful thing to be part of. So thank you for being here. I'm going to stick around, and I guess we'll get our introduction to how we're going to do all this.
If you were here last year, or if you've kind of figured out why there's name cards on the table and figured out this whole process, we've got each of the ideas that we've talked about on a table. We also have a new idea table because we're very interested in feedback. You know, as you have your creative brain juices flowing, we'd like for you to stop by there and drop off any other ideas that come to mind. We have facilitators and scribes at each table. Some of them brought along specialists and experts to help them in case there are very specific questions. You get 20 minutes per table. There are, I already mentioned the new idea table. We would like for this to be a very constructive exercise. We got a lot of great feedback last time. We got great feedback in Virginia. This will not only help us talk about how to go forward with these ideas, but how to implement them. And we're finding with the last set of ideas, things that came back in these meetings were some key assumptions and questions that are now being asked, and we had a head start in answering them because of the feedback we got here. So we'll start the clock. We've got a fancy PowerPoint up here that'll tell you when to change tables. Go. Thank you.
The idea is kind of serving two different pieces. From a customer perspective, looking at making these offerings to folks who English is not their first language, but making some particular programs, maybe focused in law, focused in medicine, or focused in research. You know, so you really have people who are coming for an intensive program, probably most likely professionals or students. Then on the other side, there are the people who actually teach ESL, and we're looking at providing classes that actually certify them in teaching this, especially those who might be interested in doing international graduate teacher assistants, things like that. So we're actually looking at both sides of that supply chain. So, what questions do you have about the idea? Or what ideas do you have already about it?
Reading through this, it sounds like it's geared towards certificate-based. You know, I mean, that's really what we're driving towards. It's an end result, right? There's got to be some sort of a measure, and some kind of the flag at the end of the race. You know, the prize you go for. It's not a degree necessarily. These are not degree credit initiatives.
You're right. It's more certificate, or it could be credit if somehow that could apply maybe into some larger program. The programs themselves would be smaller, more intensive, so it wouldn't be, you know, degree, many years kind of thing. It would be more like intensive 6-week programs. So yeah.
Just a technicality, anytime you have certificates, you've got to be very careful about the number of hours, etc. If you want students to come here using the loans. That's a very, very important aspect of certificates, that a certain number of hours, they have to be certified by Ed, Department of Ed, etc., etc. So that's something to think about.
Great.
What are the criteria?
Well, I'm not an expert on this, I will admit. I don't think we have limited tailored to what their first language needs to be in this program. A lot of ESL programs, it's more focused on the English, less on what it is you're coming to the table already speaking.
ESL is usually a term that is applied to teaching younger children. Usually it's ESL. Our former center used to be called ESL. I wasn't involved. Doesn't matter.
No, but that's a consideration. What
Have associate degrees or they qualify because they have 60 degrees, 60 credit hours already to their credit. It's maybe not an associate degree, maybe they dropped out of another college or something. Either of those cases, those are the people that would then enter this program, we're hoping, to complete another 60 credit hours to get their bachelor's degree.
And so the programs that currently exist that follow this model, one is for police professionals and the other is for people that are interested in information sciences and technology. And in those cases, they had about 60 credit, like a lot of police professionals have coursework going in to become a policeman, but that this gives them an opportunity to get a bachelor's degree that they might not have had that opportunity just because of their familial circumstances or whatever otherwise. The IST, the Information Systems Technology program is similar, where it takes people who are graduating from an associate's degree at a community college and gives them the option of going into a four-year, completing a four-year program.
Now, one difference with those two programs that already exist at the College of Professional Studies and this idea is that those programs, they meet mostly in the evenings, sometimes on the weekends, but mostly in the evenings. And this one is offered, or the intent is to offer it on the weekend when adult workers would have the time to actually go to the classroom. So it's fairly intensive on the weekends.
So are they from all different majors?
Well, the idea is that the cohort would be focusing on a major. At this idea, it's an executive style where you're going to have compressed coursework. It's going to be offered on the weekends, but it would have to find a niche. It would be picking a major that everybody would then graduate into, because their 2 initial years would be completed, and this would be giving them a junior senior year with a final major in some field.
But it all has to be the same.
It would all be the same thing.
And you're keeping all of the dorms staffed and open and secure.
Yes, which we already really have to do,
Okay.
for the most part.
Dining
I think it will be interesting to see how the financial aid or tuition goes through. I think students would be interested in that. If it wouldn't fall on the fall or spring.
Or separate. The assumption that we've gone off of is similar to that of summer, so that there is not actually financial aid, and it's based on the summer rates, not the fixed tuition. So it's sort of an added thing that a student would do. That's what the assumptions have made. Maybe that's a wrong assumption to make. That's what the assumptions at this point are made based on.
I came from a school that had it tacked on to a quarter because we had 3 quarters. So it was part of the winter quarter, and I think it helped students.
What school is it? So that we could
DePaul in Chicago.
Okay.
GW does not allow that anymore. At that time, I could go night school at Columbia University, and I was able to do it. I take a course whenever I have extra time, depending on my sports schedule. And GW no longer allows that. But again, that's your new idea. You better have a little niche, otherwise, no use coming here.
I think another element of that is, if you had a fund for incubation, so like we had ways to be more of an incubator. There are a lot of groups that want to start up, and if there's a way we can facilitate that, so whether it's an individual or a group of people that want to come to GW or comes out of GW, so we make group of grad students develop an idea, and we come up with some funding to support them, and then goes, you're already tied into the ground level.
And it's all doable because GW have an online lot of people that would put in some funds even. It's just, making it happen in a sense. And when it's a good investment, so therefore worst case, they got $1 million of experience, practical experience. That's the real benefit.
I think what we have a lot of, and that I'm familiar with, we have a lot of students who want to start up nonprofits, and they tie to a social enterprise. They tie to a business school, and I think we don't have a clear process.
You don't have a process, and you also don't have the people.
We have an
time.
office.
Like for example, they could save themselves.
Entrepreneurship, and we also have a pitch George
But it's
competition.
too focused on monetary results. If you want to really do big contribution, you don't focus on the small things that so focus on short-term business transactions. Different mentality. The other one is focused on social impact, solving major social problems. And the money will come because you're solving major problems. But you can't have that urgency on the other one. It's things that most people don't understand. So you're not going to win the competition. You don't even try to go in.
Great. Anyone else like to share other ideas? Any suggestions? Anything that comes up in your daily life?
If you compare it to like Marvin Center, right? It's not using a lot, but it's going to cost a lot to make the change. If you pull that small, long payback project with some shorter payback projects, think of the average of their paybacks. The easier, quicker payback project helps the harder, longer payback project. So if we do the Tompkins lighting project with the townhouse heating upgrade, you'll actually get a payback in the middle rather than on either end of the spectrum. So it actually makes a lot of sense to do it as a group, as a collective, because the better projects help the harder projects.
Right. And I guess that's something the original Green Fund was too small to do.
And yeah, it's only a year old, so it's
We grew over time, but we wanted to do things faster.
That's a good point with the government, because I was thinking initially it would appeal to academics because clearly having a degree is part of what marketability that's important. Do you imagine that you might be able to get this master's as part of a joint degree with one of the other degrees offers here at this university?
I think we'd say why not?
Because I'm just thinking in terms of marketing and packaging, that may help people understand its usefulness and a little bit more to say, you have this degree and you have blah, blah, blah. And these are the kinds of jobs.
So you would suggest something like environmental studies, say you got a degree at a Bachelor of Science in environmental studies, and then a master's degree in research administration.
Absolutely. Imagine how valuable it would be to a nonprofit organization that was relying on services. That's a really good point.
About sort of this whole issue, and it sort of came out of Donna making a suggestion that we look at schools that we already have partnerships with and where there's some sort of connection. But it seems to me that you're right. We can't just sort of offer a broad set of courses that have a particular direction. But if we think about, again, some kind of model like an SIW and maybe pick 4 things that we're really good at, what we're known for, programs that are areas of strength in public health or international affairs or whatever. Now come up with a program, identify schools that we think might be interested in that, and market it. The schools would have a role, and that is their faculty, the revenues go back to them, and the schools are looking for ways to grow summer. But I think we have to present something that fits their particular area of focus and that is doable. And I think we have to sort of start realistic. Well, yes, and we do in the summer. We also do a call to special programs and invite faculty to come up with ideas that they think would make sense, or programs that they're interested in because they know there's an audience for it, and we have to defer to them too on their area of expertise. So somewhere in between there. I think the issue about the message and the marketing is a role that summer plays, and that once we have a program that's more coordinated and not so happenstance, I think that's something we can easily do and work with international programs and the websites and all that kind of stuff to get it to the right audiences.
So it seems like we're leaning towards a more packaged idea for the entire program. So what would be some ways to use what we already have to make that package? What departments would those be involved in?
Well, I think you may need to think about what appeal
does DC and does GW hold for international students? And like Georgette was saying, maybe our stronger programs, business, international affairs, public health, but also the fact, depending on which country they're coming from, they may be in a course that's very, very much different than what a GW liberal arts education would be. So a student coming from the UK isn't going to want a history and a geography and a politics and a theater course. They're going to want one set of courses because they're only taking one thing. Or maybe they're interested in coming to DC because of our connections to the Capitol and the sort of semester in Washington politics or journalism or this kind of thing. Maybe there is something that's something they're interested in. So I think we need to perhaps be a little strategic in the countries that we're looking to pull from and think about what the demands on those students are in their own country to see what would appeal to them here.
So definitely identify our target audience and go from there.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I'm clear, and I may have misunderstood you. Do you see as one of the benefits of this program the opportunity for students to come here and enhance their educations back home as opposed to wanting to come here to go to school? Because that's a very different audience.
I think it might be a little bit of both.
Okay.
We didn't completely say this is for students who we want to advertise about coming to GW as to attend for their own undergraduate degrees, but so we're not going to.
They are different audiences. I wonder if that one sort of idea springs from the change of university conversation that actually Donna started with said me. We haven't done it yet, but we're talking about a program that would be
How do we attract? Okay.
The attendees also make the program.
They do.
It's not just the presenter or the instructor, but the attendees. And so it's a careful concern. It's an important concern.
Some of the price sometimes signals who can afford to come and whose organizations can pony. We assume the organization is correct in identifying folks that may or may not be right. Candidates can have their own money, maybe not necessarily the same quality.
In our executive master's program out of Ashburn that's been running now for 15 years, when we first began that, we thought that the only people that would attend that would be those that were paid for by their institutions. Turns out some people paid their own way to that program, $50,000 or so. And we also had several government people that were paid for by the government, by the federal government. We didn't expect that either, but it happened.
Is the goal to bring in primarily high-profile speakers from outside university then, or how would you secure those relationships?
It's half and half.
Okay.
The numbers that we played with just to get the idea on the table was that some number of the faculty or the presenters would be the best that we have here at GW, and some number would come from the outside, depending on the area of expertise and the subject matter. We don't have it all covered for sure. So we would be looking for world-class people from the outside, and we have to pay them.
Yeah, exactly.
Certainly many here, so.
For some forums for people to discuss the providers that they are using. I'm fortunate enough to walk into an office where I can ask some people, where do you go to the dentist around here? But if I did not have access to that, I really wouldn't know where to start. And that then becomes a deterrent. Well, I don't need to go to the dentist right now. I can't find one. So even if there's some form or some way to communicate some of that.
Version of Craigslist, where you can go on and say, hey, anybody use that? Some sort of message. And so that would serve that kind of purpose. Since we're kind of all the same boat, same insurance, same general education.
And I'm glad you brought up dental, Isaac, because we usually focus on medical, but dental and teeth health, health are just as important because they impact health concerns as well many times. So, we want to make sure that this is an all-inclusive type of program, that we're looking at all the different programs, and again, looking at what the Foggy Bottom community, what the Mount Vernon community, Virginia campus, what do all those communities already offer,
so that we can better advertise what's available and make it into one program that's easy to follow and easily available to all faculty and staff, and that they feel comfortable, accessing the programs too. So I think that's really the ultimate goal.
Basically, our idea is how do we improve retention and how do we help our, student population who is taking upwards of 6 years to graduate. How do we move it down to 4? So we're interested in your ideas, your questions.
The issue that I think we need to focus on is, and I think our past group really focused on improving first to second year retention. That is very high, and it's really the highest it's ever been, and a lot of it is because we're giving a lot more financial aid out to people. The real issue is that we really need to increase our 4 and 6 year graduation rate because it's costing us more money by keeping students around. And so we really need some ideas, which the first group did not generate a lot of. How do we improve, for the juniors and seniors, how do we improve? And one suggestion was a 5-year BS, MS engineering program degree. And we do have other programs on that. But, the question that would really be helpful is how to improve our graduation rate.
Yeah, and so some of the ideas, many of our ideas were more around retention.
Right.
Talking a little bit about...
And this is really, ours, it's not going to go much higher.
Our retention is quite good relative to others. But I think not only helping the students graduate a little sooner, but helping make sure that they graduate.
Right.
And don't not graduate at all. That's kind of the question. So helping understand, there's been ideas put on the table about trying to understand who's at risk better, and not just as a result of grades, because that's kind of easy. You've seen that new, what is the new tool? Map tool? Degree map will enable advisors to proactively reach out to people who maybe haven't figured out their graduation path, or maybe aren't taking all the right courses, and they may find themselves regretting it later. Just if you plan well. So there's some proactive things that are under works, but that's kind of the thing. How do we help people make sure they graduate, and if possible, do it in a little bit more of a timely fashion?
Just a quick question on retention. How much does geography play a role in terms of origin?
It does.
Significant?
It's significant, but you have to realize 2/3 of our students come from the East Coast.
Right.
And various times we're trying to diversify, and about 1/3 come, past the Mississippi,
but that's
the West.
upward, right?
We're getting more, but when you look at who leaves, it's the students from the small towns who are from the West, Midwest, who are leaving more than the East Coast folks. But because their numbers are smaller, it's a higher percentage of that group is leaving compared to the East Coast students. And some of it might be, and we talked about it, is, it's harder for them to find their niche here, find people like them.
And that's something that we've tried to address, and even think about the GPS program, linking folks up geographically, the geographic focus during CI, we've done that in the past with the dinners. So that's interesting and something important to pay attention to, especially if we find that not just from the West Coast, but if that mid.
You look at small towns, and it's interesting because I also looked at where they transfer to. So you have the people from the small towns are moving back to their home state. Students on financial aid are moving back transferring to their flagship state school. The California students are transferring back to their California schools. It's very interesting.
See, I wonder, because if you're question is more about 6-year versus year-to-year retention. I wonder if we shouldn't figure out what are the 5 reasons people are taking longer. So one reason they work political campaigns, one reason they go study abroad, one reason they do a gap year. And then we create 2 or 3 programs to support that. So we create a politically oriented program that like works with the students who do campaign work. We do a career professional development. So if we know they're going to do that for a year, we have somebody assigned to work with them, like a career counselor who works with them to keep them connected, or vice versa, to figure out if they're going to study abroad and they sort of get the bug and then want to do Peace Corps and then come back. How do we make sure that they come back? Like, how do we? So we have to create kind of a structure that keeps track of where they go and then keeps like reeling them back in,
them.
right? Or makes that like there's still a credit-bearing piece. So like, if you're going to work on a campaign, you can get 6 credits, and we have 50 faculty who will work with you. And that keep them getting 6 credits as opposed to just going to Iowa for 6 months.
Right.
But is that gap year element, is that a part of the concern? I was just talking to a student who went to, I didn't think so, because they went to India for a semester, not study abroad, they just took off and lived it up and learned and came back. So that's not part of the concern, because they came back.
They came back. I mean,
it's probably related to the green, energy efficient one, but it seems like the university doesn't really have good green supporting facilities, like showers for people who'd like to work or want to run to work, or maybe even evaluating the way the HVAC that we have in our buildings, which seem to sort of battle each other. So I think we spend a lot of money keeping places cold, only to have people bring space heaters, or we spend money keeping places warm, have people bring in fans and other things. So it seems like there needs to be an evaluation of that, and it may not be that we need the level of HVAC that we have on campus, or it's not really been efficiently done. I'm sure that there are people in facilities looking into this, but maybe we need a more comprehensive look at it and enforcement of certain policies to really get around it. But and it's sort of selfish too. I know there are 2 ideas, but I wouldn't mind liking to work, but there isn't really a place for me to shower unless I sign up for the Smith Center
or the gym.
Or the gym, and pay money for that. So it'd be nice to be able to do it. It's the Potomac, yes.
Dip in the morning?
Yes.
Like and swim?
The idea was for me to get cleaner.
We don't have any fountains on campus, do we?
For me to get cleaner after my
Paris globalization, I can better say the highlight of my classes thus far is probably maybe one of the highlights of my experience. And so I guess to address why a student would take a class during these terms, there's 2 main reasons. One is because they're behind on credits, and so they just need to do a core class where they want to focus on the class. It's maybe a little harder, and they want to just put all their attention to. The other reason is, and I think this is really important, is that for their break, they want to do something a little different. They want to do something distinct. And for me, going to Paris and learning about globalization and the media, I'm not a journalism major, but I just found it so interesting, and it was so experiential, and there would be some things we'd do in the American University of Paris, sometimes we'd be lectured, sometimes we'd explore, and some of it's just the little things that you can do, and when you have that amount of time to solely focus on one topic, you can really flush it out, and you get people to truly get into it more. And like there was a culture of we would all go out afterwards and we could talk about it, and and so that I would say it's very important that you can distinguish it. And I think DC, even if you don't consider it exclusively study abroad, I think DC has a lot of appeal. For instance, if you were to do like a basic macroeconomics class maybe, or a microeconomics class, and take advantage of 19th Street politics, or the NIC meets, or any of those things that DC offers that you can supplement with the class, I think you'll have an audience.
One of the ideas that I've heard floated a little bit with TOS is the idea of connecting classes to other experiential learning, like alternative breaks. And so would this be a good opportunity to say you take a 3-week course in the winter and then the class goes on an alternative break? and led by a faculty member, and that seems like a very kind of interesting and natural pairing that maybe isn't, it doesn't happen for all of them, but even if that was a possibility for a number of the classes, that they could talk about, economics or politics or all of this, and then go do service where what they've learned in the class is related to that. I think that would be a very unique experience.
I think it's a good program, but I think it might be maybe too accelerated because burnout might happen where you get to the end of this 2-year program and you're just done. So.
Let's make sure we capture that.
But I think it's a good concept.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas that might make it less stressful maybe, or have a better chance of not making people burn out?
What if it was a mix of online courses and in class?
It could be that. It could be something like that. Do you think that would help?
I've seen some programs where it is the group style, and then you meet like twice a month, like one weekend a month, and the rest is kind of like independent.
Right. There are schools that do that. Exactly.
Whatever.
That might make more sense. Okay. That's good feedback. All of it.
Are there any other universities that have center?
There are, and I don't recall. We have the summaries here. We don't have the full-blown analysis.
I mean, especially in this area, in the market
Right,
area.
that would be interesting to find out if there's like
Want to know what
University or
exactly.
university,
Is it local or
exactly, Georgetown or someone else doing a similar type of program.
Because you're going to have the similar.
I know the University of Chicago has a program that's kind of like this. It's for a master's program, and they meet a few weekends. I think it's like once a month, and then the rest, and then it's like very intensive that weekend, where there's like breakout time and like group time, and then instruction, and then the rest of the weekends, or the rest of the time you're kind of on your own to work with your groups. GW has the professional teacher. What that thing is called.
Where is that? Is that the one in Arlington?
If this would be a good place to do like a language partners,
With all the international students that are here on campus. So if we have students from all over the world that come here, so you could have, our students from Morocco do Arabic or French language hour at the ESL Center, with GW students that are in classes here or have just come back from being abroad in those places.
That's a great idea.
To piggyback on that, I think just reaching out to the international students, you probably get a lot of better feedback because you're directly from them.
Yeah.
And we can only think about what would help with them.
Yeah. And ask them directly.
Yeah.
Good point. So, what else what other risks could we run into? What other obstacles that we need to think about?
Who's teaching these classes?
And I think our intent was to make it experienced instructors, those who actually have their degrees in English or linguistics, versus man or woman off the street.
so I would talk to the professors who are teaching the English for academic purposes courses now, because this is what they're trained in.
I mean, those have been a big part of the conversation, that planning process, which I don't know, I wasn't here before, so I don't know if that was the case before. So, but they're definitely more, we're putting in toilets and we're considering renewables, it's sort of like part of the conversation.
And like what you said before, going after efficiency first and then providing our own energy source would be like the second step. It's certainly not off the table. We're actually currently installing our second and third solar thermal systems. The first one is on building JJ, which is right next to the school building. The be one on the Elliott School and then one on Akron Chapter. So that's kind of our first foray in solar thermal.
And it's the biggest source of solar power in the district right now.
When it's done. It's not done. It's still under construction.
One of the challenges that you're starting to compete for prime real estate. I mean, even though it's up there, we have a limited area of use.
Okay, that's the bell to move on to the last table. Choose it wisely.
Thank you all.
The energy savings dollars will be moved, to subsequent years of projects, programs to fund those as well. So we will be using the savings from the reduced energy to fund more energy saving projects. It's sort of like a snowball. Over the time we get it all done, and we pay for it, we get some recurring savings. That's how we're going to pay for it primarily.
So that's the gist.
So what's being done with lighting?
What kind of projects are there?
I'll take that one. Let's see. The long and short of it, there are some simple lighting upgrades that you could do, which essentially is like changing a light bulb, where you don't have to change the fixture, you don't have to change the ceiling. You can actually just change the actual bulb and what's called a ballast inside the fixture. Those kind of projects are about 50% savings. So going from one to the next, it'll actually pay back in 1 to 2 years, depending on the size of the project. That's the very simplest. We've done quite a few of those projects in the past. They're really straightforward. Lots of people do them. We still have the potential to do a lot more. So this Green Campus Fund we were just talking about over winter break in the Academic Center did just such a lighting upgrade while folks were away on winter break, changing out all the lighting. You probably didn't notice anything because we didn't change the fixtures. We just changed the bulbs and the ballast on the inside.
That would be called lighting.
Sorry?
That would be called lighting when they change it.
I've never heard the term group lighting, but we literally went in with a crew and changed out every light bulb in the building to all be efficient. So that's one way, staying with mostly the current product but upgrading the light bulb. Another perspective is jumping to some kind of new technology that's even better than the fluorescent lights that we do have. So you might have heard of LEDs, light emitting diodes. We have some of them around, in our society. They're usually just little single point lights that tell you that your phone is charging or that your TV's still on or off and whatnot. They can actually be used in large scale lighting fixtures.
Would you, if you had a person that came to you, you were looking to hire someone, would you look favorably upon someone that had a master's degree in this kind of overall umbrella, big picture of research administration?
Yeah. And
would you be willing to pay them more money because they have that? Or do you think that you'd be able to roll that into the grant?
Well, it's both, because as I say, if it's just academic education that with no practical experience, it doesn't add much, because you're going to spend most of your time basically it doesn't have the credibility. See, unfortunately, if it's just academic, it does not. That's why, as I say, it's extremely important from our point of view that they have an entrepreneurial spirit, a little bit of that. So therefore, that's why, as I say, it's extremely important. Even if they want to have some government experience or the university experience, they really need to work with whoever has the idea and take it with that to prove that they really know how to take a good idea, solid organization, everything, and still be able to make it happen. Otherwise, they haven't proven themselves. You can spend a lot of money. Like, for example, the reason why we didn't apply for grant is because the people, the grants writers, they say, well, I was going to charge you $70,000. That's because I'm a professional fundraiser, and we have to charge money. And I so I say, just because you consider yourself professional, you have to charge money, doesn't, in my view, make you professional. In fact, if you really believed it, you would actually take a little risk, because we're very entrepreneurial. So that's why we don't get anywhere. We didn't bother. We'd rather just do it out of our own pocket in a very low level, do what we can afford, and we just keep doing it for decades. But until somebody wants to take that risk.
We ran across some problems with the group that was here in the first round, and that they work with international students in summer sessions, and that it's a problem with getting visas for non-packaged programs. So obviously that's something we can definitely look into, but with the international climate and the State Department and all of those type of governmental bureaucracies that you have to go to get an international. Right, it's not getting any easier, so we would definitely have to look into that and see if that's even legally possible. But it's definitely a great idea to look into, because there are people studying American studies in England or Austria or places like that. So, and this is a great place to go for that. So, great. That we haven't, as ITF, as an exploration committee, haven't quite touched on, because we just wanted to leave that to the implementation committee.
We wanted to learn might be just a concern, but the drinking age limit, because elsewhere it is 18, but here it's 21, and it's really emphasizing that you have to follow American laws. Yeah, it's just teaching, especially.
And the driving age limit.
Yeah.
That would definitely be a concern that we would have to address incredibly fast with all of these students.
Whether it would be educational or fun activities, check out the monuments, check out Washington, or a combination of them.
Right. I think the one that we had hypothetically thought of was a combination of both. So you get the experience of being in the nation's capital of the U.S. You're also being taught classes, depending on how many credits we decide.
I learned today about what's available at the Learner Health and Wellness Center that I had no idea was available. So things like that, and just having one inventory, one place where you can find things, and then figuring out what motivates people at GW to get them involved in that type of program. And again, helping people practice healthy behaviors, but also start maybe a new healthy behavior that they were just intimidated to do before. You know, like when we talked about, we might have said it here, people were saying, you know, they're intimidated going to the Learner Health and Wellness Center to work out, because they're like, I'm going there. There were a lot of undergrads there, and I don't really feel as comfortable going there. And somebody suggested, what about having a faculty and staff class, or a designated hour, or something like that?
Or even a designated area, because Towson University has a separate faculty staff gym. I mean, completely separate from the Health and Wellness Center. You know, as small, those well appointed is very popular, because you weren't fighting with the undergrads for equipment.
Right. And just feeling like you don't want to feel, we were saying, you know, you don't want to feel like you have to work out again to work out. Right. You know, to enter the gym, you have to already be fit. It's kind of, you know, you want to be motivated to go there to feel better and to, you know, start that healthy lifestyle and that kind of thing. And everybody, one person had said, you know, we don't want to tie this strictly to weight loss. That's not what this is about. It's for your mind, body. It's for, you know, work-life balance type of thing. It's not just about this department lost X pounds and this department lost another, you know, number of pounds. We want it to be the whole person, and providing that kind of well-rounded, holistic approach to wellness.
Several women got together and hired a trainer to come for an hour, and you know, they went off on a roof garden and exercised. They had a trainer that was, you know, limited equipment, but the trainer actually helped them learn how to exercise themselves. And you know, if that's something that could be sponsored, even if it's, you know, partially paid for, you might get people to sign up for that in a smaller.
Right. It's interesting too, and I'm not as familiar. I know we offer courses and things, but I do believe we have an exercise science group, you know, like a program here on campus, and maybe some of those people who are in that program we might be able to engage some of them to help out with these type of initiatives as well. Again, tapping into the resources that we have here on campus as well. So it's a great idea.
The Health and Wellness Center has personal trainers available as well. And I mean, I guess the other thing is in Virginia, there aren't those facilities out there. Because I know some of my colleagues that are there at basketball, they would be out there every lunch break and play basketball.
Maybe even if there was a benefit for all of the individual offices, I think it was a small amount of money, and then each office could decide what they wanted to do, either buy, you know, healthy snacks, or sponsor like a team walk or something, or something like that. Because I think each office has its own office dynamic.
So I think I have maybe departmental wellness goals, something like that. That each person could have something, each department could have something different.
Instead of, but in addition to like
The benefit, one would be to use my smart benefit for the capital bike share program. I'd really like to learn how to use that and take a ride around the second thing would be to have more access to like the yoga classes, the fitness classes. I am a member of the Learner Center, but you have to pay an additional fee.
That's what somebody was saying, yeah.
So I bet in other places where it's easier to access and sign up.
Yeah, and again, we were talking maybe that would be where we would have maybe just a specific faculty and staff class that where you'd be able to get in a little bit more easy. Yeah.
I think one of the existing programs that we have to encourage people to quit smoking, I think it's a good program, but I don't think it's publicized well enough. And also, like, none of the smokers in my office know about it. And it's very interesting that, you know, I think it'd be very simple to put up signage where people go to smoke.
You know, in my last company, we actually, the location where people would smoke, we actually had permission to drill into the building, the sign. And so people are standing smoking, but they're standing next to the sign that says, you know, quit smoking, something like that, or no smoking here, or something. So actually, I think that's kind of the universal message, is making it really advertised well and eye-catching to get people motivated and engaged. Yeah, absolutely. And strategic policing.
Now I gotta.
Yeah, the information.
I gotta show.
That finishes off the afternoon. Let me say just a couple of things. First of all, to give you a sense of where we are in the process, the input from you and the people who were at the Monday meeting out of Virginia Science and Technology campus will now be collated and will go back to the Expiration Committee. The Expiration Committee will meet next Monday, and they will take your input and then begin to match that against the proposals that they have out there, with possibility for modification, possibility for a much more careful look at the ideas. On Wednesday, when we meet with the president and his senior staff, the report will come in with the 9 ideas, the proposals, and then there will be an addendum. And the addendum will be, this is what the community showcases, our showcases, came up with. So the president's very clear that he did not want any ideas that came forward until they were vetted with the community. So your ideas, your input is extremely important for us. Once the president and his senior staff have taken a look at this, then they will make a decision about which 6 of these ideas will move forward in terms of implementation. And we will get the information out to you. We'll be in the process of selecting a champion for each of them, and then an innovation team. So we'll give you plenty of press in terms of what will be going on. It's very exciting. And then the Expiration Committee starts the next round. They will go to work on coming up with some other ideas, looking carefully at them as we move forward. Let me say once again, thank you very much for being here. Your input is extremely important as we look at things. The committee has done a thorough analysis. They have done some very interesting and good financial analysis for one thing, and getting input from a variety of people. But having listened, there's some things they simply didn't know. And that's where you come in. You have perspectives as stakeholders that will help us to understand much more fully about what to do. 2 final notes. If you have any things that still need to be said, get onto the website and provide that information for us. You can do that. If you want to be identified, that's fine, or if you want to make it anonymous, that's fine as well. Secondly, the website is open for new ideas, and we're encouraging you to come up with some new ideas that will come into the Expiration Committee. Thank you again for all your good work today, and you will hear from us. Thanks.